the first point I want to make is this stuck spot over here, and this is only really if you're kiting the dragon in the south. But you know, just so if you know, the Sestra calls that he's stuck, he's going to be in this spot, and it's one of this spot here. Oh no, it's this one here, right here. And you sort of come out of it eventually, but it's just a really awkward position. So if this happens, you know where Sestra is. He's always going to be in this spot. Sometimes it's quite unavoidable because he's kiting backwards and then he gets wing buffeted and he can land right in this spot. Obviously a DDO to get him out of there is a great way to do it. As dragon kiters, you've got to understand that obviously when these dragons spawn, they're facing in towards the meridian. So when you're standing here waiting for your dragon to become active, you're in the line of sight, the direct line of sight of the other kiter's dragon. So this is why a lot of groups, and sometimes in our own runs, we see that we have this walk across effect, or at least the south dragon walks across the middle, and that's just the line of sight aggro, so you've got to keep that in mind. You can start the raid right in front of the dragon just to make sure you've absolutely got line of sight aggro on him, and then as soon as he activates, make your walk to where you're going to kite him. And like everybody knows, Ruin bypasses their invulnerability, and Fury does 1 point of damage every time it hits. 1 point of damage is all you need to take the dragon's aggro as long as no one else has ruined it and run over. But it's all about that line of sight. I mean, sometimes we get fireballed here at the entrance, and that's just because the dragon's seen one of us first as he's tried to turn around and he's line of sighted us. Those fireballs obviously hurt. We had a few deaths last time just because of like not having a fire absorption at the start there, so just be wary of that. There's another spot over in the north here, which is, I don't think there's a stuck spot in the north. There could be one hidden. It's not really one that you see very often because there's a lot more room here to kite. But this is a spot that everyone should know. I mean, we don't tank the dragons here because it's cheesy, but you know, it's a spot that if you're under pressure, especially in this area and there's a dragon nearby, so you don't have enough abundant step to get out of it, try and get into this spot and it will at least give you a bit of time to sort of recuperate yourself. The dragon can't melee you here, he can only fireball you here. I'm not sure if the trash can reach you here, but in any case it's a really nice place to get to if you need a breathing spot. Just want to talk about the spawn points now. Haven't really thought of a good way to number these spawn points. But basically they're the same every time. There's two types of spawns. There's the hell. Yeah, I was going to number them, but the trouble is there's a double spawn and it just doesn't really it's not really conducive to the naming. The first spawn is a hellhound spawn. It's about 3 or 4 hellhounds and 2 salamanders. I believe if the 2 salamanders that spawn from this south spawn, and I'll put the ice storm down, it's pretty much exactly here. If the 2 salamanders that spawn from this spot are still on the map, then you only get hellhounds spawn here. You won't get salamanders spawn here. So I believe that as long as the salamanders are up already, then they don't respawn in. Because I've never seen more than 4 salamanders on a map.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So this is the first spawn. This is the spawn that comes in after the North Dragon has flown in the air the first time. And then we have the double spawn, and this is the one that adds the DA. This is the problem spawn. Obviously we fight in...
Isn't there a hellhound spawn in the north first?
No, it's included in this double spawn. This is why it causes so much problems. The skelly spawn is the other one, and in the skelly spawn you get a lot of trash, a lot more than you get in the hellhound spawn. There's probably about 8 skellies altogether, and there's a necro in the middle, and they tend to spawn on these blue patches here. The other one, there's 2 of these spawns, and one of them is here, and the other one is another blue patch. So there's a necromancer in the middle, and there's loads of skellies that spawn around him, archers and melee. And they have a tendency to spawn in and all go different directions. So that this is the double spawn, so it's that spawn and the Hellhound spawn.
Yeah, one thing about Skelly Spawn I want to add, if you're just on trash and not a blitzer and don't have anything important to do, your first focus should always be the Necromancer, because he causes the most trouble.
He anti-dispels, he dispels and he instant kills, which is a combo that's deadly, obviously.
Also, in the moment he dies, he also stuns all the skeletons that spawn, which is a bit of a help on the blitzer.
So I've put Sleet Storms up on the double spawn here. It will always spawn, and this has a tendency to always go onto the North Kiter. So if our casters, and I know that's primarily my job, but it's also a caster's job too, is to make sure they have an Ice Storm down there to just instantly aggro this spawn off of the North Dragon Kiter, because if we neglect to do this over the course of about 5 minutes, the North Kiter gets so much trash on him, and if he has that trash on him when the giant elementals spawn, he's just going to get even more trash on him, and it's just going to cause him to die. So just take note of that double spawn there. It's a very so ideally the way we want to deal with this spawn, with our kill zone being in front of this entrance, is that hopefully all of these skellies that spawn in this double spawn will just naturally aggro onto the DPS group and not necessarily onto Sestra or the South Dragon Kiter. But we absolutely must have a caster in this group, probably just sort of looking at this spawn and making sure that they have an AoE up, or there is an AoE up. And the idea here is just to aggro the spawn, and you don't need to DPS it as a caster, you just want to get light aggro onto it and make sure you're standing over here so it comes to the group. So that's the second spawn, and that's the double spawn. You've got around about 30 seconds to about 40 seconds between these spawns here. The last spawn in the cycle is another Skelly's North spawn, and it spawns right where Ambi's sitting here. Notice this bluey green tinted patch of grass here. This is where it comes. And this is just like the South Skelly spawn. About 8 skeletons with a Necromancer in the middle. This does have a tendency to go to the north as well, but because it's so close to the entrance, as long as you've got an Ice Storm down there, you'll get everything come to you. After that spawn's done, we cycle back round to the south spawn, and it's just continuous like that. And we said this before, I'll move on to now how the dragons fly up and come down and attack them. At the start, they're obviously the first beatdown. After the first beatdown happens, they come into the middle, and then the North Dragon flies up in the air. And then you'll have only the North Dragon, then, because he's the only one in the air. The South Dragon's still there, being DPS down by the Kiter. The North Dragon flies in the air, and he's responsible for the fireballs on the ground. He can cast 2 fireballs at a time in different places, centered around players. So it's threatening, but it's not as bad as when both of the dragons are flying up. When the North Dragon comes back down again, he comes back down when the South Dragon gets beaten down. He'll come down, they'll walk in the middle, and there's quite a... It's one of the longest pauses when they come to the middle, this second pause. They'll both become actionable again, just like at the start. Then this is where we've sort of failed in previous runs, is it's the next beatdown. So as soon as the first dragon during this stage beatdown goes invulnerable, it's the Kiter's responsibility to work together and look at the HP of the one that's gone invulnerable, and then look at their dragon's hit points if their dragon's the one that hasn't gone invulnerable, and sort of judge when the raid gets pushed forward, because it's when the higher hit points dragon reaches the hit points of the invulnerability dragon, the raid gets pushed forward, and then we get the Ellies in. And if you don't know, the Ellie spawn is the biggest spawn in the raid, and it's 2 sets of skellies at the same time. They stand around here with necromancers, and obviously the devastators and annihilators, they spawn too. It's quite possible to actually just aggro the Devastators for a few seconds and just have the trash just stay here, because not many people hang around this area of the raid, so they'll just stay here for a bit. Obviously, if it's above orange alerts at the time when they spawn in, they'll go into high alert mode and they'll almost just start looking at the first sign of the first sign of any players standing by. Why this spawn is important is because of numbers. This is a double spawn. Why we want to pause to make sure that we control when that spawn comes in is, say if we've had spawn number 1 here, the Hellhounds in the south, and then we push the raid forward, we then get the biggest spawn in the raid happen with the double spawn of Skellies, and then in a few seconds later we get a double spawn here with Hellhounds and South Skelly, and that's what's giving us that red alert. And all of the mobs just go into that high state of alertness and we just get harried down, and it's just a real struggle. So we really want to control that when we push the raid forward.
We need to start talking about that moment well before it comes too. So let's just keep a lookout for Dragon HP.
And I'm going to have to put that responsibility on the kiters, because I've tried to do it in previous runs and it's too difficult to do it from this point of view.
Well, we never really had it as a specific task.
Yeah.
Like
so I will be trying to sort of give people roles and responsibilities during the raid.
Who's our North Kiter?
I think, well, Bodid has the most experience, so.
I've got a new kiting pattern that I'm going to be using. Can I talk about that for a second?
Sure.
All I do, it's basically a semicircle. The dragon's in probably next to the phylactery, coming towards where I am now, and then I start moving this way, and he stops a lot of the time and tries a special attack, and then turns now and comes to me here, and then when he gets to where the phylactery is, I start going back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the main, unless he gets right out of sync, which he can do with a jump or something, and then I'll try and get him back into that. So there will be times when I'm going to be moving around out of that sync, but that's what I'm going to be trying to achieve. When I'm here, though, he can jump to me, land right where I am now, facing you guys, and breathe, or do whatever attack he was going to do on me, and I will have moved out of the way, and that's the dangerous time. So if I say look out, I mean that's what I'm talking about.
And obviously this new kiting pattern means that the dragon's in this field, on this line, on the equator. Therefore the north kiter needs to be aware of that, you know, if it's invulnerable. It doesn't mean that he's aggroed the dragon or anything, it just means it's just part of Sestra's kiting pattern.
So it would be good for the North Kiter, dude, for you to be as far north up here as you can. Possibly even use you could use the same technique and just do a semicircle around using the wall as your straight line.
Right.
And try and keep the dragon as far back here. He starts walking to you and you start circling back.
Yep. I tend to stay pretty close to the wall, but I like that semicircle, can avoid the knockdown.
Yeah, you want to block when you see him doing his jump. You definitely want to block, because you will get shock and awed, and he does catch up to you then if you don't have key. So if you can block and then just tumble sideways out of it and just keep running sideways, like 90 degrees to him, to where he's facing, you'll just get out of it. And it's so much better. And you don't get knocked down.
And to anybody kiting a dragon, your time to get your tactic down and the way you want to kite the dragon down is at the start of the raid. It doesn't matter if the kiter goes down at the start of the raid. If you're experimenting with stuff, just make sure you're comfortable with your kiting pattern then and there, because when the dragon gets that big buff, you know, that's when you can't die. That's when the raid group really needs you to stay alive, because a dragon running amok during the beginning is survivable. It's not that big of a problem. It's people can still take melee hits off of him, but if you get a dragon that's gone amok with the buff, he's just going to lay waste to the party.
And don't be fooled into DPSing trash mobs when you've got that dragon close to you. I mean, just don't do it. It's just not. Anyway, that'll be your call, but not dying is so key in this. Like, when you start dying, other people start dying.
The last thing I wanted to talk about that I can think of at the moment is just, obviously, if you didn't know, the fireballs get sent, the floor fireballs, they get centered where you stand. Therefore, ETH's going to be here most of the raid. ETH can barely survive a double hit. If it's just ETH standing here, the chances are that he's not going to get as bombarded as if all of the healers and all of the casters, CC casters, are standing here. However, we want to keep CC up on ETH to help him stay alive. So we need to keep our distance. We want to be playing the raid around this area, towards the middle around here, so we can target where ETH's standing, but we're not standing on top of him, so much so that we're just bombarding him more with fireballs. So yeah, fireballs. So knowing that mechanic, having lots of death penalties, and knowing that you need to just sort of wait out the raid for a bit and let your death penalties down. If you're waiting your death penalties down, don't stand anywhere in this area, because this is where the most people are going to just fuck off to the west and just sort of kite around, even go up to that little safe spot up here to the north with the tree and wait it out there. Because the more people standing in an area, the chances are the more fireballs are going to appear there. And remember, each dragon can cast 2 fireballs. Therefore, when both dragons are flying during the big Ellie spawn, that's 4 fireballs on the map at any one time. And if everyone's standing here, that means 4 fireballs are going to land here. So that's just something to bear in mind.
Your best bet
I would go over here for recovery, as long as it wasn't anywhere near the... You can just be over here, invised, sneak mode, freaking fire shielded and blocking.
Where are you? Oh yeah, that's what
in front of the cave.
Yeah, that was what I was about to say. Your best bet is far in the west, because there's nothing that spawns and you
right,
get aggro off. Also, one thing we should mention is trash management. Do not ever waste the DPS on nightmare boots or the snakes. There's just no point. There will be no point in the raid where no little trash is alive. All the hellhounds and skeletons and necromancers. This is what you want in DPS.
Yeah.
Boots and snakes do not matter because they respawn anyway, and if you don't kill them, they don't respawn, so there's absolutely no point.
We really want to be looking at the people that don't have to be standing still to dish out DPS or be useful, to always be looking for opportunities to aggro those useless mobs, and the useless mobs are the brutes and the salamanders. So if you've got no aggro and you're not a class that has to stand still to DPS, and you see a salamander or a brute running amok across the map or on ETH, try and get it off them and try and keep that mob on you, because it's a lot easier to play this raid with one of those as a ranged DPS toon or as a spellcaster than it is for ETH blitzing having 2 salamanders on his back.
Keep in mind that they do debuff you to fire damage.
They do, yeah.
So that would be kind of my job?
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't want to be a vegetable, you know?
The more...
Well, you won't be.
You want to stay in Archer's Focus, I'd recommend do.
Okay.
Not Ira, just do. The reason for that is you can go IPS in here, but you have to keep like when the big Ellie spawn in, you don't want to get that spawn necessarily, that entire spawn. You just want to get your Ellie that's responsible for you, that's in your sort of path. And if you're IPSing at that point, you're just going to pick up the entire spawn.
I think in general it would also be a good idea if Ira just takes care of all the little trash that is on the Kaidos. Just pick them out so they run towards him. So you can bring it to the middle or just kill it.
Be ready to put, be ready to put damage on the dragon if me or Dude go down. like straight away. If
Okay.
I go down, you know it's south. If DDO goes down, you know it's north.
Alright.
Abundant step, get straight up there and get damage on that dragon. It doesn't have to be an adrenaline, just get damage on it. In fact, light damage is probably better. And just take it back north, and then when dude's up, as soon as he's buffed, or when I'm up, as soon as I'm buffed,
Yeah.
take it back.
That's the thing, you know. A dragon kiter, they're so important in this raid. However, they're really expendable because you can get them back up and into the fight within a matter of like 3 seconds. And if you're one of those people, you know, like Ambi's obviously going to be heavy rezzing here. He's a good person to do this. You want to sort of call the people that are going to be responsible for rezzing. Someone needs to get aggro of that dragon immediately before you even res the guy that's done. You just want to get aggro of it and make sure he doesn't come to the party, or you just want to make sure we remain to have control of that dragon. So you just want to get his attention and then get the kiter up, and then the kiter can get back into action almost immediately after like a cold shield scroll.
Okay.
I wanted to ask actually if anyone knows what this dwarven artifact and talking to it does.
Negative.
Because I've heard some rumours in groups that you don't even need to talk to this or do anything to it. The raid still progresses. I mean, I haven't seen it happen really yet where I can confidently say we don't need to talk to this, but I was just sort of... I would say let's still talk to it, seeing as nobody else can shed...
Oh, well,
Test it on normal.
That
Yeah.
phase,
we can test it on hard.
Yeah.
phase is not
But
too
not on
bad
elite.
anyway, so one person is expendable.
Yeah.
There are no fireballs. And...
Alright, well let's